brothers and sisters. That's very kind of you. It's a lovely welcome to the meeting tonight. And can I thank Sue for her lovely words, and Mark, not just for his lovely words about me, but also his introduction to tonight's meeting. I think the way he managed to illustrate just how untrustworthy the British establishment is by using real occasions and real situations in terms of the massive, brutal and very cruel cover-up in relation to Hillsborough. And let's remember, Mrs Thatcher knew exactly what she was doing and colluded in that cover-up. We have to remember that the same people who are waged against us, trying to stop us getting our freedom on the 18th of September, are the people who were involved in the Hillsborough cover-up, and the people who are involved just now in the paedophile cover-up as well at Westminster. So let's remember that. Let's remember who it is that we've got waged against us. I also want to thank Tim. I don't know if Tim's made it he's there yet. Tim for putting on the meeting. He's very, very gratefully agreed to put myself and Gail up in the hotel so that we don't have to drive back in the middle of the night. So Tim, thanks very much for putting on the meeting and for giving us some hospitality, so thanks a lot for that. I was going to start with something and I'll go back to it, but I was, I think, spurred to tell you a wee story because of the way Mark finished his contribution when he referred to the abundance of pies that are available tonight. I once had an occasion to do a visit to McGee's Bakery in Glasgow, and I was shown round the pie making part of the factory, and I was amazed, you know, because it became clear to me, very abundantly clear to me, that this was the analogy of politics. Because what happened was there was a big machine and a big conveyor belt, and it was all dead mechanised, all looked dead efficient. Every so often the wee bit of pastry would stop, the mince would be added in, it would move on, and then the wrappers would get added on, and it would keep going and keep going. And then every so often it kept stopping, and I'm saying, oh God, is that it broke, is that it broke? And the guy said, no, 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 we're just changing the wrappers. They were the Tesco pies, and these ones are, in those days it was Safeway, New Morrison's. And I suddenly thought, by the way, that's just like politics, isn't it? They've all got different wrappers, but it's the same mince that you get out of it. It's the same thing. This campaign has got a wee bit personal. I don't know if you heard the news today, it's a tragedy actually. Jim Murphy's suspended his campaign. I don't know what people are going to do. They'll be crying in the streets. They'll be saying, oh no. We were looking forward to hearing Jim. I actually heard Jim. This is a true story. I heard Jim in 1985. I wasn't long back from Stirling University. I graduated at Stirling University, and I wanted to do a health and fitness course. Even though in my degree I thought I was always into health and fitness. So I went to Cardonald College, and I was going to do a health and fitness course at Cardonald College. And in those days I had joined the Labour Party, and I was a socialist. I was selling the Militant newspaper. I used to sell outside the college, and I got berated one day. I got a right good ear bashing for this guy who was very wide-eyed and very vocal. I always remember the huge big nose. And he had a paper called Fight Racism, Fight Imperialism, it was called. And he was shouting at me and saying, you're letting down the working class. You're letting down the working class. You're sowing illusions in the parliamentary road to socialism. You're a disgrace. That was Jim Murphy, by the way. Jim Murphy, Cardonald College, 1985. I was sowing illusions in the parliamentary road to socialism. Oh, how he's travelled, eh? Oh, how he's travelled to become a warmonger and a war apologist, a lick spittle for Tony Blair and everything that he's done. And now he's given up his wee tour because apparently somebody wasted a good egg. I'm not going to on the back of the head or whatever. Now, by the way, I don't want to be misquoted here and misunderstood. I don't support that, actually. I think you should debate these people rather than throw eggs at them. As I say, waste a bloody egg. But things have got personal. I was looking at some of the comments made the other day in the course of this debate, and I thought, this is getting a bit brutal. We need to watch it doesn't get out of hand. I heard someone refer to one of the leaders of the No campaign as utterly hopeless. That when this guy was in government, he presided over a permanent air of chaos and crisis. He ran a brutal regime that while he was in power, his behaviour was appalling. And I thought, well, you know, this is getting a wee bit personal, you know. That's what Alistair Darling said about Gordon Brown. It tells you something, doesn't it? It tells you something when they're inside, they're fighting among themselves like that, doesn't it? Yeah. Think about it, brothers and sisters. Think about this just for a wee moment. What Mark said earlier, 38 newspapers sold in Scotland. A media which has been absolutely disgraceful in its biased coverage of this referendum. Absolutely disgraceful. Particularly the British Broadcasting Corporation. They're obviously determined to keep it that way. And the multi-millionaires and billionaires that have been roped into this debate to try and convince us that we're all better together. Think about this for a moment. Think about the people that have been getting involved. The Chinese Premier. Now, I can't remember his name. He can't remember my name, so it's not a problem. But he came out in the beginning of June to announce that it was in China's interest for Scotland to vote no. Now, I don't know what he knows about Scotland. I certainly don't know much about China. But the British government wanted him to make his remarks known. And then, just a couple of weeks ago, we had Mr. Abbott making his remarks known. Now, I thought when I read him, I thought, well, this must be Abbott and Costello, is that funny? But it turns out it's Tony Abbott, and he's the Prime Minister of Australia. And what he said 2 weeks ago was, only those who are opposed to freedom are voting yes. That's my best direct quotes. Only those who are opposed to freedom are voting yes. Australian Prime Minister. And at the end of June, I don't know if you remember this one, we had the bold Barack Obama. Now, he told us a year ago he wasn't going to take part in this, he was going to keep out of it. But he got involved at the end of June to declare that it was in America's interest for a strong, united kingdom. A strong, united kingdom. He wanted the referendum to be won by the UK. He wanted Scotland to vote no. And then, a couple of days after that, the president-in-waiting, apparently, Hillary Clinton, she got involved. She started the bumper guns as well. And she said that it was also her belief and her opinion that it was in America's interest for a no vote in the referendum. They need a strong, united kingdom. And when I saw those comments at the end of June, I thought, oh, by the way, what a story this is going to be. I could see it, you know, I could watch on Sky News, the ticker tape would come up. America declares returning to British tutelage. They're giving up their independence. I thought, oh, what a story. But funny enough, 4th of July came, and America never celebrated Separation Day, but they did celebrate Independence Day. I've got to say loud and clear to Mr. Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, if independence is good enough for America, it's good enough for Scotland as well. They haven't been the only ones who have been enlisted into this debate, of course. A couple of weeks ago, did you see the letter? It was printed in the London Times. It got a massive amount of publicity, signed by 200 worthies. There's all sirs and lords and ladies and OBEs and CBEs, most of them millionaires, and they were all telling us that we should all vote no. We should all vote no because we're all better together. And then, and this was a hard one, because I thought when I seen this, I thought, oh no, this is going to be hard to oppose, you know. Formidable opponent. How are we going to take this one on? And this could lose us the vote. Simon Cowell has come out for a no vote. Now, I'm not going to have a vote because I used to wear my trousers quite high up as well. But, you know, multi-millionaire Simon Cowell has declared that he thinks the people of Scotland should vote no. Brothers and sisters, the reason I give you that wee litany of individuals, some of them very powerful, some of them with big positions, ruling countries, the reason it's important that we recognise why they've got involved so far. Do you honestly think if the British establishment thought they had this in the bag, that the Australian Prime Minister, the Chinese Premier, the President of America would get involved in this debate? The reason they're all involved, the reason they're all trying to get us to vote no, is because it's squeaky bum time for the British establishment, folks. We have got a position here. We've got a position here. 3 weeks to go. 3 weeks to go, and every single rigged opinion poll shows it's neck and neck. The working class areas of Scotland show clearly 65–70% support for independence. The other opinion polls, most of which you have to pre-register for to become a member of the opinion poll panel. You know, I bet you have all been dying to do that. Eh? Oh, I want to be in the panel, I want to be in the panel. And yet that's supposed to be representative of Scotland. Brothers and sisters, the truth is, not only is this on a knife edge, as even the Daily Mail had to admit today. God almighty, I said to Mark before the meeting, I said, I saw it in the garage, you know, Daily Mail, Union on a knife edge. I thought, should I get it? Nah, I'll just tell you. That is how clear it is, folks. With 3 weeks to go, we should be very, very encouraged, very, very proud that despite the weight of opposition, despite the power of the opposition, despite the money that they've spent so far, despite the fear stories that they have managed to spread like manure all over this debate, trying to distort the discussion, trying to distort the education that's required as far as this debate is concerned. Despite all of that, we're heading for a victory. We're heading for a victory. The figures show, brothers and sisters, and perhaps this should be our slogan for the next 3 weeks. What the figures show is if every single yes voter can convince one more voter, we are going to win hands down. That's the reality of this next 3 weeks. Brothers and sisters, I think it is important at these meetings that we highlight what this debate is about, but also what this debate is not about. Despite the efforts of the Better Together campaign to try and make this into a popularity contest between Alex Salmond, the SNP, it's all about the Nats this, the Nats that. Apparently it's only nationalists that are voting yes. Brothers and sisters, I'm a socialist. As a socialist, I'm an internationalist. I tell you what, I've fought long and hard and will continue to fight hard to maintain the independence of socialist Cuba, of socialist Venezuela. I believe it's absolutely vital. And I would look forward to this in an independent Scotland. I wish we were independent in the last month. Because as an independent country, Scotland, I am absolutely sure, would have been one of the first countries in the world to expel the Israeli ambassador and boycott Israel.
independence, why is it not good enough for the people of Scotland to have that independence? For those on the left in particular, people who are on the left of politics, who think it's good to fight for freedom for every other country on the planet, but apparently not for Scotland. Well, brothers and sisters, I think it is important that we highlight this isn't about Alex Salmond. This isn't about the SNP. And by the way, I'm not saying that from a point of view of criticising the SNP as a political party. They've done well over many years to keep the question of independence live. Well done. But on the ballot paper, some of you have seen it already. Some of you have got postal votes. Some of you have been on Facebook. You'll have seen the ballot paper. It's very, very simple, brothers and sisters. Should Scotland be an independent country? Yes or no? There is no SNP. There is no Alex Salmond. There is no any other political party or politician. We have to underline time and time again in this next 3 weeks. This referendum isn't about political parties or politicians. It's much more important than that. This referendum is about the future of your children and your grandchildren. It's about the future of your country. That's what this referendum is about, brothers and sisters. That's what we have to have. That's what we have to say. You're not voting in 3 weeks' time for our party, for our manifesto, for our politician. You're voting in 3 weeks' time for the right to decide who runs your country when you vote. That's why at these meetings I'm very, very proud. This is the 88th meeting I've had the privilege of addressing on the question of independence, and I see it all of the meetings. That what this referendum's about is not the politicians, not the political parties. This referendum is about freedom itself. That's what it's about, freedom. And some people will say, oh, Tommy, come on, son. Come on. You've been playing the soundtrack of Braveheart all the way here to Moniaive, right? Where's the kilt? Where's the claymore? Why is the face no painted, you know? Has he been touching the sherries on his way in? Brothers and sisters, we may not be in a prison. We may not be in shackles or chains. We may not even be in handcuffs. I know a thing or two about being in handcuffs. By the way, just in case there's any gutter journalists in here tonight, none of them for kinky reasons. We may not be in literal handcuffs, but we're in political handcuffs. That's why this is about freedom. You see, since 1951, this wee country, Scotland, has consistently rejected the political creed of greed. This wee country, Scotland, has rejected the political manifesto that dictates the way to motivate the working class is you pay them less and you get them to work longer. But the way to motivate the ruling class is you cut their taxes and give them bigger bonuses. This wee country, Scotland, has rejected the political manifesto that determines that essential public services should be sold to city spivs in London to make them even richer than they already are. We, since 1951, have rejected all of those political ideas because since 1951 we have consistently refused to vote for a Tory government. That's what this wee country Scotland's done. And yet, here's the political handcuffs. Since 1951, we've rejected those political ideas, but we've had to endure 35 years of Tory governments that we never voted for. That's the political handcuffs that we're in. We've had to endure the woman that Mark mentioned earlier, Thatcher. Think what she did. Think what happened when we had a rigged referendum on devolution in '79, when we won it. But it was rigged because of the 40% rule that was introduced. By the way, if the 40% rule for parliamentary elections, we wouldn't have any bloody MPs in, because they wouldn't pass that particular barrier. But they rigged it. And Thatcher got a chance to bring ruination on the people of Scotland. Why? Because we refused to support her. We refused to vote for her. She declared there was no such thing as society. No such thing as society. Here in Scotland we disagree. We think there is such a thing as society. We think society is where you look after your neighbour, you look out for the elderly, you look after the disabled. That's what we think society is. And we believe it still exists, and that we should nurture it, and we should grow it. They think they should destroy it. No such thing as society. Think for a moment, folks. Think what that woman did to this country because we refused to support her. She took her brutal acts to shipbuilding, to steel making, to the coal pits. Think of this. Some of you will have your own experiences of visiting places like Cumnock, visiting places like Killock, visiting places all across the Fife coalfields, Valleyfield and the rest. I did that in the 80s. And I witnessed full employment. I witnessed hope and aspiration. I witnessed communities that didn't know what heroin was, didn't know what unemployment was, didn't know what low pay was, didn't know what social division was. I'll tell you what, they know what they are now because they've been destroyed by Thatcher and Thatcherism. They know what they are now. This was a woman who for 18 years brought nothing but despair and destruction in this country and in other working class areas in England and Wales as well. That Scotland never ever voted for that woman. Here's a wee something for you to think about. If you're swithering, if you're still no sure, Mrs. Thatcher despised the idea of independence. Wouldn't it give you a wee smile on your face? To know that you were doing something that would upset Thatcher. Because we know she's doing there after everything she's done is. And she looks up on the 19th of September and she's greeting because the Scots have voted yes for independence. Wouldn't that be a wonderful wee revenge on that woman who wrought nothing but despair on our country? Folks, you have it within your hands. Why is it about freedom? Because you have the freedom, each and every one of you. This isn't about multi-millionaires. They got one vote the same as you. You've got the same power on the 18th of September as all of these people. That's the difference. This is about you having the chance to exercise your power. You can guarantee that your wains and your grand wains will never ever have to endure a Tory government ever again. That's what a yes vote can deliver for the people of Scotland. That's what voting for. Worth voting for, folks, because you know, those of you that have lived through the Thatcher era, those of you who know what it's like here and now to struggle to make ends meet. I've got an Oxfam report there. First 12 months of this condemned bunch of political cretins. First 12 months, 900,000 extra people in poverty. 900,000, 300,000 of them wains. 90% of the others workers. Workers. This isn't about poverty for the unemployed now. This is about poverty for working people. Because wages are so damned low, they can't afford the essentials of life. 900,000 extra in the first 12 months. They've called it, in this Oxfam report, speeded up Thatcherism. Speeded up Thatcherism. Such are the cuts in welfare, such are the cuts in the public services, that it's been described as speeded up Thatcherism. Here's the rub. That report goes on to say that only 40% of the cuts that have already been announced have yet been implemented. 60% are still to come. By the way, 2 weeks ago,
2 weeks ago, any of you picked up a Daily Record, you would have seen a story, very, very strange story for the Daily Pravda in relation to the No campaign. But they carried this story 2 weeks ago. It was let out of the bag, and I apologise here to any of you that are lovers of rodents, but the ginger rodent, Danny Alexander, let it out of the bag because he had a dossier on his lap as he was driving into a cabinet meeting. And what did the dossier reveal? The dossier revealed that as a result of the next batch of cuts that have already been implemented, the next batch of the £83 billion worth of cuts in public services and welfare, there are going to be considerable job losses across the UK in the next 12 months. How many? 490,000. 490,000 in the public services. In Scotland, 60,000 job losses. 60,000 job losses. In local government, in the health service, in education, 60,000 job losses. That's not all. The dossier goes on to explain that they are going to encourage the private sector to pick up the slack because they're going to introduce pay restraints and reduced hours for the remaining workers within the public sector. So not only are we going to have an absolute destruction of public sector jobs, but those who remain in employment will have less pay, less hours, more poverty. See any of you are thinking, I'm not really convinced yet. I'd rather have the devil you know. I've listened to the arguments, I'm not sure yet. I want to stay with the stability of a no vote, I'm going to stay with the UK. Please believe me, that is not a status quo vote. That is not a vote to stay the same. Voting no isn't about staying the same. Voting no is about things getting worse. Much, much worse. If you think things are tough than new, you better waken up to the reality of the absolute destruction that's waiting round the corner if this country rejects the opportunity to take its own destiny in its own hands. By the way, that's not the only freedom that you've got to get rid of the Tories and to stop austerity measures. You've also got the freedom to save public services. I'm fed up with the political illiteracy, the economic ignorance of those in the no camp who say, when people like me tell you that without a yes vote our NHS will be privatised, without a yes vote our education services will be privatised, these people say, oh no it won't, don't worry, that's scaremongering. These services are devolved to the Scottish Parliament. The Scottish Parliament will defend these services. Brothers and sisters, that is pure and utter economic, political illiteracy. Yes, politically, health and education is devolved to the Scottish Parliament. But who do you think pays for them? Who do you think pays for them? It's like the equivalent of you as the parents and the Waynes coming to get their pocket money off you every week. Now the Waynes might think they can do what they want with the pocket money, but what they can't do is determine how much pocket money you're going to give them. They can't determine that. We control, in Scotland, 7% of the money that's spent in Scotland. 7%. The other 93% is controlled by Westminster. Now, I'll tell you this. Some of you ought to go and have a look at the Health and Social Care Act. Go online. Look up Dr. Alison Pollock. Look up Dr. Philippa Whiteford. Listen to people who are health professionals with 30 and 40 years experience in the health service. Health and Social Care Act passed in Westminster in 2012 has abolished, effectively, the health service in England. They've now opened up to private sector priority, private sector provision. 60 different companies have been invited to tender now for the provision of healthcare services. Companies like PricewaterhouseCoopers, companies like Virgin Money, companies like Royal Bank of Scotland. What do they know about healthcare? Bugger all. What do they know about making money? Plenty. They've been invited in now to provide healthcare services in England, childcare, cancer care, elderly care, and they have been given the right as part of the Health and Social Care Act to determine who pays and how much they pay. English citizens are now going to be told that they're going to have to take out private health insurance. It's a system modelled on the United States of America, where when you go to hospital, they don't reach for your pulse, they reach for your wallet. That's the system that's been introduced right now in England. See if you don't believe me, again, go online and check the number of marches that are taking place tomorrow, because tomorrow is a national day of action in England. They've modelled it on the Jarrow marches against unemployment in the 1930s, but they're marching for all parts of England tomorrow. Why? To save the health service. To save the health service. Hundreds of thousands, millions marching because the Health and Social Care Act has signalled the end of free public provision of health care. Now, 19th September, we've voted no, and we go down to Westminster. Well, by the way, we've got free prescriptions up the road, and we've got free elderly care, and it's your health service. We want to keep it public. We don't want any private sector involvement, private sector provision. We just want to give everybody the right to free, universal health care at the point of need. And Westminster looks at us and says, what? You bunch of cowards. You had the chance. You had the chance to save your health service. On your way, here's the money we're giving you. You'll do the same as we're doing. You think we're going to pay for your public health service while we've privatised ours? Similarly, exact same story, education. By the way, as a socialist, I don't think our education service is open enough for working class kids. We need to do more to open up opportunities to the working class in an independent Scotland. For a start, we need to return to what I benefited from in 1981 when I went to university with parents for low paid employment. I qualified for a living grant in an independent Scotland. I worked grant for kids to go to university. But at least in Scotland with a Scottish Parliament, we have managed to prevent upfront tuition fees from being introduced. Some of you might not be aware of this. But in England right now, for kids that want to go to university, they have to pay upfront tuition fees £9,000 a year. £9,000 a year. A 4-year degree, £36,000. Where are you getting that money from? And by the way, that's just the start. You've still got living expenses, you've still got books, you've still got all the other costs of a full-time education. At least here in Scotland, we don't have upfront tuition fees. We've opposed them and we've prevented them. 19th of September, we go down to Westminster on the back of a no vote. Oh, hey, by the way, could you give us that extra money because we want to keep our education free? We don't want to charge the kids upfront tuition fees. You think they're going to say, no problem, aye, there you go, there's the money. They're going to say, what? We're charging kids down here 9,000, expected to go up to 11,000 in 2 years' time. You'll need to do the same. They will cut and slash our budgets in order to force privatisation of education on us. That's why we can say, without fear of contradiction, if you want to save the health service, if you want to keep education free, the only vote for you in 3 weeks' time is a yes vote. That's the only vote that's going to guarantee those and then there's another freedom you've got. This freedom might not rock everybody's boat. Maybe it rocks mine because of the amount of times I've been arrested outside Faslane nuclear submarine base. I've got to say to you, we've got the chance here, Scotland. This wee country has got the chance to make our mark on the planet as a country of peace. A country that announces that we are fed up collectively. We are fed up collectively of a situation where, whether it's Red Nose Day, Live Aid, Band Aid, marches to end poverty, UNICEF appeals at the beginning of the Commonwealth Games, well-kept faces snap their fingers on the telly and telling their kids died every 4 seconds of malnutrition or cholera or dysentery. I think, brothers and sisters, it's time for us collectively to ask the question, why, oh why is it that there is never ever enough money to feed starving Waynes, to solve
for the poor kids of the world. But there's always enough money to buy bombs and missiles and wars. Why do all the funds for that? Surely it's time here. Surely it's time for us to stand up and be counted and to declare loud and clear, we are fed up with 130 billion pounds of taxpayers' money about to be invested in a new generation of illegal, immoral weapons of mass destruction, which are no more than scrap metal. Scrap metal, why? Because if you ever use them, then the planet's finished anyway. It's all over. Just in case there's some people in there thinking, oh, but Tommy, maybe we should keep them in case anybody attacks us. I'm afraid you've got it wrong. We don't have retaliatory nuclear weapons. We have first strike nuclear weapons. That's the only way ours can be used. So if you want to destroy another part of the planet, fine, you can keep your nuclear weapons. But see me, seeing an independent Scotland, I want a different experience when you go to the high streets of Scotland. I don't want any longer people rattling cans when you're going up and down the high street saying, please help us, we're collecting for the homeless. Please help us, we're collecting for the sick children's hospital. We can't afford an MRI scanner. We can't afford another kidney dialysis machine. Please help us, because we need to rely on charitable donations for essential things like that. There will still be some people collecting in an independent Scotland. It'll be your bomber George Robertson and your warmonger John Reid and maybe Mr. Murphy. And they'll be saying, please help us, we want to build a new nuclear weapon. Go and give us a wee donation. I wonder how much they'll collect. Brothers and sisters, what an opportunity, what a freedom you've got in your hands here. To declare for peace instead of for war. To say we want to spend our taxes not on nuclear weapons. We want to spend our taxes on nurses and doctors and schools and hospitals and teachers. That's what's important in life. That's what's important to our country. You have got the opportunity, you've got the freedom to make that choice and to show the rest of the world what is important and what is not important. Brothers and sisters, we also have the freedom to save the mail service. The mail service, which has been public for centuries, they now want to privatise it. Independent Scotland's committed to bringing it back into public ownership. You've got the freedom to vote against a poverty minimum wage and instead for a living wage that gives people dignity and employment. Think about this for a minute, folks. Why, oh why do we continue as a society to subsidise the Asdas, the Morrisons, the Tesco's of the world? Why do we continue to subsidise these big employers that make billions of pounds profit every year and pay their workers poverty wages? They pay them so low that the workers claim council tax benefit, housing benefit, working families tax credit. So we pick up the tab for these companies paying wages that are too low. See, in an independent Scotland, we should introduce, as of law, a living wage below which no one is paid. A living wage. So that we remove the indignity of working hard 5 and 6 days a week and still relying on benefits to survive. That is unacceptable in a modern economy. By the way, let's stop looking. Let's stop looking down the way to what they're doing in England. How they're driving everything to the bottom. See how low we can pay people. See how much we can get the working class to fight among each other. Let's reject the idea of a million 0-hour contracts 0-hour contracts, what are they? They're a return to the days of the 30s in the shipyards, where men would turn up day in, day out and no know from day to day whether their families were going to be fed, because they would be chosen on a daily basis and whether they were getting a job that day. That's what a 0-hour contract is. 1 million of them exist now across Britain, 100,000 of them in Scotland. Most of them paying less than the minimum wage. Less than the minimum wage. No national insurance, no holiday entitlement, no sickness pay. 0-hour contracts, 1 million of them. And an independent Scotland don't just have a living wage. Let's abolish 0-hour contracts as well. And an independent Scotland. We have to waken up here, brothers and sisters. Please, let's waken up. I was looking at a report the other day. A report that shows the stories of what we're against here. One report determines the lifestyles of the rich. Some of you might be in here tonight. I apologise if I'm going But here is the richest 1,000 in Britain. This is a survey that's been done since 1985 by a guy called Philip Beresford. And he's produced his report in which he explains that the richest 1,000 in Britain have had a massive increase in their wealth in the last 12 months, to the extent that they now share a combined wealth of £519 billion between 1,000 people. £519,000 million between 1,000 people. It's grotesque. Absolutely grotesque. He says in this report, he says, I've never seen such a phenomenal rise in personal wealth as the growth in the fortunes of Britain's 1,000 richest people over the past year. He goes on to say, the richest people in Britain have had an astonishing year. An astonishing year. Brothers and sisters, 900,000 extra people in poverty. 900,000 extra poverty. An astonishing year for the rich. That cabinet that I talked about, 29 members of that condemned cabinet, 23 out of 29 of them, personal millionaires. Personal millionaires, that's 80%. 80% of the cabinet, personal millionaires. How many millionaires in society as a whole? 0.7% of the population. How unrepresentative is that? A cabinet with 80% millionaires. A society with 0.7%. These are the people. These are the people, we're all in it together, remember? We're all in it together. These are the people we met last April. They met last April in their big cabinet room, in their spaceship Enterprise, that's where these political space cadets meet. And they decided to discuss how it is they could cut the austerity, how they could introduce more cuts in order to save public money. So they thought to themselves, right, what can we do? Here's an idea. Apparently these pesky working class folk who are living in council houses and housing association houses, apparently, wait for it, they're giving their kids separate bedrooms. How dare they? How dare they? Let's introduce a tax. Let's introduce a tax and we'll penalise those families that receive housing benefit. We'll cut their housing benefit if they dare to give their kids separate bedrooms. And by the way, while we're at it, why don't we target that other vulnerable section of society, the disabled? See those disabled citizens. See those disabled citizens who have went to housing associations and councils and claimed houses and they've been given spare bedrooms because they need somewhere for their dialysis machine, or they need somewhere for their wheelchair, or they need somewhere for their partner who's their full-time carer to sleep because their illness is so bad they can't sleep through the night. Why don't we target them, eh? Because we're all in it together. Why don't we cut their housing benefit? That's what these bunch of political cretins did last April. They introduced the bedroom tax to attack the poor. The same day they introduced the bedroom tax, they also had a wee bit of representation from the chaps and chapesses who are only paid £150,000 a year. And apparently they were complaining that their tax was too high. So this group of people who just introduced the bedroom tax decided, why don't we cut the tax? Why don't we cut the tax
from those earning 150,000 and more, from 50 pence in the pound to 45 pence in the pound. That's what they did. The result is 13,000 millionaires. 13,000 millionaires in Britain today pay £100,000 a year less in tax than they did last year. £100,000 less. We're all in it together. My arse. This is government of the rich, for the rich, by the rich. That's what this Condemned government is all about. And we have an opportunity in 3 weeks' time, brothers and sisters, to get off that particular bus. We can get off the bus. That bus that's headed towards more privatisation, more low pay, more zero-hour contracts, more inequality, more tax cuts for the rich, more policies like bedroom tax. We can get off the bus and build a new and a better Scotland. Independence. Let's be clear on this. Independence is not a destination. Independence is only the start of the journey. The start of the journey to transform Scotland. Scotland isn't going to become automatically on the 19th of September a better place to live materially, but it can become a better place to live materially because we'll then have the tools to tackle the problems that we have. And by the way, even without doing anything, a vote for independence will save 60,000 jobs. It will stop the next batch of austerity cuts. Why? Why? Because we will have politicians in Scotland on the 19th of September looking towards the election in 2016, and there's not one politician in Scotland wants to introduce another single austerity cut before 2016 because they know that they will be kicked out of office if they do that. You have it within your hands to stop those austerity cuts with a yes vote. Brothers and sisters, this other report that I want to refer to, this was the largest study that's never been done into British poverty. Been done by a collection of academics from all sorts of universities, 12 different universities. And what it showed was that the number of Scottish households falling below the poverty line has risen by 19% in the last 30 years. Despite the economy growing by double, the number of people in Scotland living in poverty has increased by 20%. It goes on to talk about how 33% of society now have inadequate heating, damp housing, overcrowded, can't afford money for decoration, or in housing in debt arrears. And it goes on to give figures which show that we have over 5.5 million families living in overcrowded conditions. We have 1 in 4 kids getting brought up in poverty. We've got 1 million families now relying on food banks. In Glasgow alone, 4,000 wains a day relying on food banks. The British Red Cross, for the first time since 1945, are giving out food parcels. We have a country with the 3rd lowest pensions in the whole of the developed world, 2nd lowest wages in the whole of the developed world, largest transport costs in the whole of the developed world, largest childcare costs in the whole of Europe. We have poverty, we have division, we have social inequality. The reason I give you all those statistics, folks, is I want you the next time you see somebody campaigning for no, and they're campaigning under the slogan Better Together, I want you to please approach them, please, and say, can you answer me this? See if we're better together. Why, oh why, are we not better today? Why are we not better today if we're better together? Brothers and sisters, some people think, oh, but wait a wee minute, Tommy. You're talking about investing more in health, investing more in education. You're talking about investing in social housing. Can we afford it? Can we afford to stand on our own 2 feet? Is Scotland going to be able to afford to be independent? I had the dubious pleasure a few weeks back of debating with the bulging Michael Buffon-Portillo in the Edinburgh, the wee makeshift studio, and he was sitting across from me with the tartan trousers on,
No pockets, because he doesn't need them, doesn't go into them. we used to pay for everything when he was a minister. We now pay for everything, he's a BBC pundit. And the bold Michael listened to me argue for an independent Scotland, and one of the things I was arguing was that we have in Scotland 200,000 families that are either on waiting lists or living in overcrowded conditions. 200,000. We've got hundreds of thousands, predominantly young people unemployed without any trades. In an independent Scotland, perhaps we could think rationally and we could decide, well, wait a minute, we actually need good quality local authority homes. We need to train people to be plumbers, to be brickies, to be joiners and glaziers, and quantity surveyors. Why don't we actually think straight and say, let's build brand new houses, hundreds of thousands across Scotland, and put people into work? Why don't we do that? Wouldn't that make sense? Wouldn't that make sense? And of course, economically, the people that are in work, rather than receiving benefits, what do they do? Not only do they spend their money on goods and services, which improves the opportunities for small businesses to grow their business, but they also pay tax. They pay tax, which then allows more investment in health and education. That's the type of policies that we could implement in an independent Scotland. Common sense, economic, rational policies. Instead of looking down at England and that race to the bottom, we start looking across at the Norways and the Denmarks and the Swedens, and we say, hey, by the way, they've got high-wage economies, they've got good quality public services. Yes, their standard of living's higher, but their wages are higher as well. Instead of looking down there, why don't we as an independent Scotland look across the water and begin to say that's the way we want to organise our affairs? The bold Michael listened to some of my remarks, and then he looked down his nose at me in his patronising fashion, as these public school boys do. And he said, yeah, the problem with Mr. Sheridan and his independent Scotland, of course, is once they're independent, they'll lose England's subsidies. And I thought, there goes the waste of a very expensive private education. These guys are so damn ignorant of the facts, they don't realise how foolish they're being. Think about this, folks, think about this. The last 33 years in a row, 33 consecutive years, this wee country, Scotland, has paid more into the Westminster pot than we've got back from the Westminster pot. We ain't those subsidy junkies. We are net contributors to the UK economy. That's the fact. That's the fact. And if you think about it for a moment, folks, see if we were subsidy junkies, do you think they'd want to keep us? Businesses for Independence. Businesses for Independence. It's an organisation for small businesses. I remember speaking with them in February at a meeting at Glasgow University. They have 1,500 members. I spoke with them 2 weeks ago in Cumbernauld. They've now got 2,500 members. 2,500 small businesses all signed up for Businesses for Independence. Why? Because they think it's going to be bad for business in an independent Scotland? No, because they know in Scotland, with more people working, with more dynamism, with more energy, they've got a better chance of growing their small businesses. That's why they've signed up to Businesses for Independence. They've done the detailed research. In the last 5 years alone, if Scotland had kept the tax and revenue that we generated and spent it in our own economy, in our own public services, we would have had an extra £8,300 million to spend on our public services. £8.3 billion. Brothers and sisters, I've just told you that there's 60,000 job losses about to arrive in the doorstep if we vote no. 60,000 people. Public services are going to be decimated. Elderly care, children's services, local government services are going to be decimated. See, in an independent Scotland, cuts. Who needs cuts? The only debate we're going to have in an independent Scotland is not what to cut, it's what to invest in first. That's the debate we're going to have in an independent Scotland. extra in the last 5 years alone, more than £1 billion a year more to spend on public services. And then some people say, oh, but Tommy, you know, that's based on some of that oil revenue and all that, you know, and you know, you've got to watch because it's running out, Some of you are going to get pulled into your work on Monday, you know. Boss is going to say, I want a word with you in the office, you know, they're going to sit you down. I've got bad news for you. Oh, what is it, what is it? I can only guarantee you employment for the next 40 years. And you're going to look at them and think, oh, right, is that bad news? Think about what this no crowd is all about. Oh, the oil's going to run out in 2050, you know, I'll go over there after 2050. Oh, help my bulb, you know, panic station. What are we going to do for the next 40 years with that oil revenue? We can build it up and do what countries like Norway have done. Put it into oil funds in order it's there for a rainy day. But the only problem is, brothers and sisters, we don't even need a rainy day. Because what have all the geological surveys shown in the west coast of Scotland? They've shown now conclusively that we have just as much oil, if not more, untapped, unextracted in the west coast, but we can't extract it. Why? Because it's in the direct shipping line of Trident. Well, there's an easy solution. Get rid of Trident. So don't let some of the scare stories of, oh, the oil's running out of the oil. We've got plenty for the next 40, 50 years, and we've got others. And we've got other resources in the west coast. But even if we didn't want to extract it, we've got 25% of Europe's renewable energy resources, wind, wave, solar power, here in Scotland. Here in Scotland. We can become the world leader. We can export clean energy across the world. Think about that. Not only will we be known as a country of peace, we'll also be known as a country of clean energy production as well. That's the potential we've got. Development of the turbines, servicing of the turbines, installation of the turbines, tens of thousands of skilled jobs required. We have got the potential to create a dynamic and very economic, fairer country in Scotland. We've got the chance to redistribute wealth. We've got the chance here in Scotland, folks, to address the social and economic problems which scar us as a country. We're a poverty-riddled country. We're a low-paying country. We're a country with problems of homelessness, problems of drug and alcohol addiction. We can tackle those problems with economic activity, with investment in social services and education and training. We can raise the standard of living of every man, woman and child in Scotland. We don't just have oil, we don't just have gas, we don't just have land, we don't just have water, we don't just have excellent universities, we don't just have excellent research and development in medicine and engineering. We also have, in Jimmy Reid's words when he said, the untapped resources in the North Sea are as nothing compared to the untapped resources of the people of Scotland. That's what it is. No one can seriously suggest that this wee country, Scotland, is not able to stand on its own 2 feet. Not only are we economically capable, but all of the surveys and analysis that have been done from the Financial Times to the Economist to Standard & Poor have shown that we actually would be the most economically stable country that's ever declared its independence. Ever declared its independence. And as Mark said earlier, by the way, I couldn't stop laughing on my way back from Dunbar the other night. I was listening on the radio to the Bull Darling giving it, oh, you know, you have to realise this is irrevocable, irrevocable, irrevocable. You know, instead of just saying you can never go back, you had to use irrevocable, irrevocable. And my mom was in the motorways and I says, I wonder, Mom, can you remember any country in the world that's ever said, hey, by the way, we want to give up our independence now, we want to come back. We know it's irrevocable, that's why we're going to vote yes. We know it's irrevocable.
sisters, I want to conclude my remarks by saying to you that all of us will have different visions of how we see an independent Scotland developing. The Yes tent is huge, massive big tent. We're all in that tent with the one thing in mind, to secure a yes vote. That's what we're all got in common. But see, within the tent, there's wee debates going on about how we want an independent Scotland to look, what we think the priorities should be. I've got disagreements. I've got disagreements with the SNP leadership. I don't think, quite frankly, in an independent Scotland, that the Bank of England should have anything to do with this. Hey? Independent Scotland, what do I want? I want an independent, publicly owned Scottish bank that runs a Scottish pound. That's what I want, an independent Scotland. I don't want the Bank of England telling us when we try and build 100,000 new local authority homes, oh, we're not giving you the money. No, I want a Scottish independent bank providing the finance for public works schemes that put people into jobs and actually solve the social problems that require to be tackled. European Union. I've got to say, I may be on the wrong side of this debate after independence with some of you. The European Union, to me, is a big business, corrupt organisation that promotes privatisation of public services across Europe for the benefit of the free market. That's all it's there to do. I don't want to live in the European Union. I don't want an independent Scotland in the European Union. I want an independent Scotland to have bilateral trading agreements with countries across Europe, to be members of the Free European Trade Agreement. I want an independent Scotland to do what Norway and Finland does. It manages to trade with countries across Europe without being members of the European Union. We don't need to be in it. I want a referendum on that in an independent Scotland. Similarly, when it comes to the head of state, you know, I disagree with the SNP. They want a slimmed down monarchy. I don't want to put them in any diet, slim fast or anything. I just don't agree. I don't agree that anyone should have any power or authority over me unless they're elected. That's the simple. Scotland, we can have a debate about currency. We can have a debate about the European Union. We can have a debate about the head of state. And by the way, I might lose all three of them. I might lose all three of those debates. No problem. Why? Because I'll have lost the debate to the people of Scotland who have decided that. Without independence, we will decide none of those questions. They will be decided by the south-east of England, as everything else is decided by them just now. That's the reality. Brothers and sisters, my vision of an independent Scotland is a Scotland that does what the Labour government didn't have the backbone to do in 13 years of power. It addresses the scandal of fuel poverty in this country, and it does what they should have done. It takes back the gas and the electricity, public ownership, instead of private sector. That's what we're going to do. Let's run the gas, the electricity, the trains. Let's look at the oil. Why is it? Why is it Norway is so stable with an £800 billion oil fund? Because the oil is public. The same as Kuwait, the same as Venezuela, the same as the Middle East countries. Well, if their oil is public, why is our oil not public as well here in Scotland? That's what we're going to do in Scotland. These are the things people will debate about, people will campaign for. These are not the things you're voting for on the 18th of September. These are the things that you can get to decide on if you vote yes on the 18th of September. That's the difference. Brothers and sisters, my vision of an independent Scotland is 20 years from now. 20 years from now, we Wayne sitting on our mammy's knees, asking questions like, Mammy, what was poverty?
Mammy, what was racism? Mammy, what was nuclear weapons? You see, this is my 88th meeting, as I said earlier. And it's been a great privilege. Brilliant. Met some beautiful people all across Scotland. I've got to see parts of Scotland I've never seen before. What a beautiful, beautiful country we live in. Absolutely beautiful. Absolutely breathtaking. But I'll tell you what, it's got its opportunity cost. Fortunately, I've got my beautiful wife with me tonight, Gail. And I'm very glad that Gail is able to come tonight. But you know what? See, every night of the week, because that's every night of the week now, right up to 16th September, every night of the week. And my wee Gabrielle, my wee angel, 9 years of age, she always puts her arms around me around about tea time and says, Daddy, I don't want you to go to the meeting tonight. Because I can't do her homework with her, I can't tuck her into bed, I can't do the things that you ought to take for granted. We ought to take for granted as parents. Some of you walk away from home, some of you maybe in the armed services, some of you in the oil rigs. You know what I'm talking about here. The heartache of leaving your kids. By the way, I try and take her to meetings. We took her to Cumbernauld last Saturday, Gail and I. And, you know, honesty of kids, she says to me, Daddy, I've heard it all before. Wonderful, isn't it? But you know what, brothers and sisters? The thing that consoles me, the time I'm losing with my wee darling, the thing that consoles me is I'm fighting for her. I'm fighting for her because you know what? She is a 50-year-old. I will benefit from an independent Scotland because I'm going to live in a better country, there's no doubt about it. But see, the real beneficiaries of an independent Scotland is the 9-year-olds and the 10-year-olds. They're going to inherit a country with less poverty. They're going to inherit a country with more environmentally friendly policies. They're going to inherit a country that doesn't have nuclear weapons. They're going to inherit a country that's at peace with itself, with a higher standard of living. They're going to inherit a country that they can be proud to grow up in. That's why it's so important to give up the time and to fight for independence. Brothers and sisters, the great Nelson Mandela once said, may your life's choices be informed by hope, not by fear. I think that's what we've got to take on board here in this next 3 weeks. As I go across the country, I get inspired by the verse of a song which I want to finish on. A song which I think should become the slogan, should become the anthem of the Yes campaign when we're raged against all of the multi-billionaires, all of the powerful media. A song by Labi Siffre called Something Inside So Strong. Brothers and sisters, when we insist we are just not good enough, when we know better, just look them in the eyes and say, we're going to do it anyway. Thanks very much, brothers and sisters.
Thank you very much, Tommy. Thank you very much, Mark. There'll now be a 10-minute break where you can go to the bathroom, have a cigarette, go to the bar. Please, if you have a question to ask when you come back, think about it now. There are toilets...
Questions, any questions?
Woo!
Can we thank, I think it was Tim that supplied the pies. Were the pies any good? Well done, Tim. He was up all night making them. There you go. Okay, I think we've got a first question. All I would ask, folks, is if you don't mind, just giving us your first name. And we ask a question so that we can be in first name terms because we're odd job dancing terms and all that. So, a chap at the back here.
My name's Duncan. In the Trident debate, Kenny McCaskill completed the concluding speech in the Scottish Houses of Parliament with the following remark. The most important reason for voting yes is the moral argument for removing the Trident nuclear weapon of mass destruction from Scotland. Do you agree?
Actually, do you know, it's a more difficult question than it would appear, because it's definitely in my top 5 reasons for voting independence. Certainly very, very high up. But do you know, see if we remove Trident and we've still got unemployed Waynes, and we've still got food banks, and we've still got homelessness, it will never be worth it. That's the truth. I want to remove Trident, but the most important thing I want to remove is poverty. Poverty is the thing that we've got to attack. And therefore, in terms of what Kenny McCaskill said, I would agree that it's a fundamental, vital reason for voting independence. But the single most important reason for me is I'm fed up hearing people waging wars. The war I want to wage is on poverty and inequality. That's the war that we can wage in an independent Scotland. So I would say tackling poverty, tackling inequality, that's my top one. And then near it is definitely nuclear disarmament. It's by the way, it's non-negotiable. It's not up for negotiation. That's been clarified now. This isn't something that's going to be negotiated over the next 18 months after independence. Nuclear weapons, if we vote yes, are going. And by the way, let's be clear, just in case I should have clarified it, I don't want nuclear weapons to be moved to Plymouth or Falmouth or Portsmouth. MOD did a feasibility study. They looked at moving them to Portsmouth. They concluded that the collateral damage of an accident was too high, so we'll just keep them in the Clyde. They should call us the Expendables. I don't want to move Trident, I want to decommission Trident completely. However, in the interim period between removing and decommissioning, we're going to have to store them somewhere. There's a big river called the River Thames. There's a big house on the River Thames. Let's store them on the River Thames, outside that big house, and I wonder how quick they'll be decommissioned then. That's what I want to do with nuclear weapons.
I think things have changed a little bit on this subject as the debate's gone on, because I think a lot of people, just to start with, were thinking it is abhorrent to have these weapons of mass destruction. But through the campaign it has emerged this great big monumental oil field out in the Clyde Basin, and speaking a little bit parochially for the southwest of Scotland, when you see what oil off the coast has done for Aberdeenshire, you know, what a hell of a difference that's going to make for Ayrshire and Dumfries and Galloway if Michael Heseltine's veto of 1981 does get overthrown. I would guess on the 19th of September someone in Edinburgh is going to sign, you know, the forms to say, yeah, get on with it, you know, get drilling. And I think, you know, as Tommy was saying, one of the quick fixes to a lot of poverty is get that oil field going. And the only reason we're not doing is the Trident sub. So it's a bit of a win-win getting rid of it. It's the right thing to do, but there's going to be a few bob in it for everyone as well, and a lot of jobs.
So, I wouldn't trust people like Blair or Bush to be there saying, push the button. We've seen they took us into an illegal war in Iraq. What's happened? 100-odd British soldiers died, 1,000-odd American soldiers. But what's happened to them? 100,000 Iraqis have died, and they've destabilised the whole bloody Middle East. So that's the disaster. And if you give those sort of idiots the power, you've given them big trouble.
Yeah. Any other questions for yourself, the lady at the front there?
My name's Margaret Stewart, and I have a son who's in the military, due hopefully to leave it soon. I want to know what's going to happen to the armed forces.
Thanks very much, Margaret. Margaret and I had a wee chat during the break about this question as well, and I'm glad Margaret's raised it here. Undoubtedly in an independent Scotland there's going to be a need for a defence force. We're going to have to defend economic installations. We're going to have to defend some of the waters and the borders. There's no doubt about that. I've got to say, however, as somebody who's not a big militaristic individual, I hope it is a defence force. I'm not interested in having an invading force, because I don't want us to invade anybody. One of the reasons I want independence is so that we never take part in any other illegal invasions and immoral wars in the future. I want to tell you a wee story here that sums up my idea of an independent Scotland as far as the military is concerned, because it's no doubt that if you were looking at Scottish regiments and the defence of Scottish regiments, who would you trust more, a government in Holyrood or a government in Westminster to protect Scottish regiments, right? There's no doubt that the government in Holyrood would come under more pressure. But here's the rub. My wee pal, a wee guy called Gordon, 19 years of age, used to help me give out leaflets in Pollock when I stood in the Parliament elections. And he was a lovely young lad, but he was unemployed, and the government job centre sent Gordon to a catering course in the south side of Glasgow to learn to be a cook. And he didn't like it, just didn't want to be a cook. So next time we went down to sign on, the army had a recruitment table there. And they said to him, if you sign up, we'll get you an HGV licence. And with your HGV licence, you'll never be unemployed again. You'll always get a job with an HGV licence. Gordon signed up. 6 months later, he was in Basra, and he was blowing his smithereens. Gordon's no longer with us. Gordon Gentle, 19 years of age. Gordon died in an armoured personnel carrier that didn't have a reinforced steel floor. The MOD had been warned that they needed to have reinforced steel floors in these armoured personnel carriers because of the danger of IEDs, improvised explosive devices. I want you to contrast and compare a government that's prepared to spend hundreds of billions of pounds on nuclear weapons, but isn't prepared to spend a few £1,000s in reinforcing the armoured personnel carriers. Now, by the way, they shouldn't have been there, they shouldn't have been sent there. But see, if you're going to send young working class kids into war zones, at least send them there with the equipment that's going to defend them. So from my point of view, Margaret, to answer your question, in an independent Scotland, yes, there'll be a defence force. But see, when it comes to HGV licences, see when it comes to mechanics and engineers, I don't want one single kid having to join the army to get a trade. I want them to get a trade in civilian street. Well, that's what an independent Scotland is.
You're interested in some facts and figures on this. I mean, the last set of government accounts, all of us in Scotland sent 3.4 billion quid south as our contribution to the defence budget, and 1.9 billion quid was spent up here in Scotland. So again, it's a big subsidy which we send south. And you know, if you're wondering where the subsidy goes, I saw some interesting stuff about compare and contrast the British Army with the Israeli Army. I'm like Tommy, I'm no great defender of the Israeli Army, but they're both about 100,000 guys. They've both been involved in a lot of combat over recent years. And I think from a pure military point of view, they both are considered to be effective armies. And any army needs to be fed and watered and make sure you've got enough bullets and enough petrol to go in the cars, etc. Logistics. And for that you need a backup department. In London, to back up our armed forces, we have the Ministry of Defence building, in which there are 23,000 people, and some of the tastiest pensions you've ever seen in your life. In Tel Aviv, they've got a building with 378 people. And I've never noticed the Israeli army in Gaza, they don't run out of bullets and they don't have nothing to eat. So what we're actually subsidising, we're not subsidising, you know, as Tommy said, soldiers who are properly armed in decent boots, with armoured vests and the right vehicles drive around in. We're just endlessly subsidising this gravy train that is the MOD. And in case anyone's not heard, I mean, there is a plan for Fastlane once the nukes go. It will become the headquarters of the new Scottish Army. It has to have one. The buildings are all there. And there really are not going to be any job losses. And I was so sick to hear Alistair Darling with this nonsense he was spouting last week about 8,000 jobs lost on Trident. You know, there won't be job losses. But at the moment, this is another area when you actually look at, open the books, look at the figures, we subsidise to the tune of 1.5 billion quid. So we will, I'm sure, have a much more effective army, but at a hell of a sight less money as far as Scotland's concerned.
The
Hi Tom, how you doing? I was going to start off by asking you a question, but that's changed. I want to tell you about myself, right? Frank knows who I'm at. I met Frank tonight, first time, and yet we've dealt with each other how long? A couple of years. Right? I run a homeless unit. Right? I work with the homeless. Right? And all I can tell you is, over the last couple of years, it's getting outrageous. The money's not there. I've got people coming in, Steinways, right? Because they're not paying their £15 top up over 3 or 4 weeks, they're getting made unemployed, they're getting put back out, right? Because of this government, right? Not so much Scotland, the government. If you start getting behind in your rent of £15, there's a lot of people there. I see, Frank will tell you this, right? 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I was doing 1 referral a week, right, for a food parcel. I'm now doing 5 and 6 a week, right? If you want to vote no, right, my numbers are going to go up, right? Let's sort out the homeless. Yeah. Let's do a yes vote. Let's help people out. Because, tell you what, we're socialists. We've got to help people out. Yet this government is cutting it back and cutting it back and cutting it back. What do you want? Do you want people living in tents? Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
So, is it running? Is it running? I think Brian's contribution, folks, is the type of contribution you would expect from someone who works at the coalface. Works at the coalface in relation to dealing with society's social problems. And let's be clear about it, homelessness could strike anybody. All it takes is unemployment. All it takes is a split of a relationship. All it takes is an accident at work. All it takes is some mental health illness. The reality of homelessness is it's very, very rarely on its own. Homelessness is usually married to other problems, addiction, drugs, alcohol, relationship breakdown, mental health problems. It can happen to any of us. So please, please believe me, don't look down your nose at the homeless. You might be in those shoes in one day. What I think we need is not just bricks and mortar. Bricks and mortar are essential to solve homelessness. But see if you've not got the support staff as well. See if you've not got the support workers. Because a lot of these people don't know how to have an independent life because they've had addictions before. Some of them are coming out of institutions. Some of them have been without parents. We have to have a social policy that's joined up. That we don't just have hussies to put people in, but we have support packages to support people in as well. By the way, it doesn't just make sense from a social point of view, from a human point of view. Also makes sense from an economic point of view. I've often made this point in terms of Mark and I have been involved in drug policies and talking about drug policies. It's incredible if you think about it that we have an attitude to drugs, and I know that not everyone's going to agree with me here and we can have a debate about it, but we have an attitude to drugs which I think is completely and utterly hypocritical, completely and utterly counterproductive. No one would think twice the night about saying to somebody, have a pint, have a wee dram. Nobody think twice about it. Despite the fact that is the most dangerous drug in society. I've been in 4 of Scotland's jails. Can I tell you that I've never ever encountered anybody in jail yet who slashed somebody after having a joint. But I've encountered an awful lot of people. I've encountered an awful lot of people that have inflicted violence because they were so drunk and out their heats that they get involved in violent activities. Why do we continue to have an attitude, for instance, to cannabis, that you're a criminal if you smoke a joint? By the way, the most likely target of somebody on a joint is to attack a fridge rather than So the idea that we have an attitude that we're going to criminalise somebody for taking a joint but we're going to encourage and applaud people for taking drinks, because we've got all these adverts, we've got these tokens in the newspapers, give away cheap lagers and all the rest of it. I don't want to encourage any drug taking. I don't want to advertise any drug taking. But I want to stop criminalising people for taking a drug of choice. And I would much rather that we had an attitude of actually trying to medically approach the problem of drug abuse than criminally approaching it. Because by criminally approaching it, all we're doing is creating some of the most effective gangs in the world. Who is it that's driving the 44s through the cities of Scotland now? It's no those that are using the drugs, it's those that are selling the drugs. So from my point of view, folks, in an independent Scotland, I hope we're going to have a more mature attitude to these ideas, and we're actually going to tackle them with modern solutions instead of having our heads stuck in the sand. And similarly with homelessness, that we're going to have a joined up approach, not just the bricks and mortar, but the support staff as well.
On this one, and obviously, I think a bit ironic there, Tommy, actually saying to a guy who works in the homeless place and he's working at the gold face, it's the only gold face he's going to find, isn't it? We don't do gold faces anymore. Just in case anyone is under an illusion that this whole ridiculous welfare reform agenda is in any way, shape or form fair, we give out 500 food parcels a month at First Base, and to make guys' life a bit easier, if someone gets a sanction for 3 months, that essentially means they've got no money for 3 months, and it's a real difficulty for them. Twice a week they've got to go and find someone to give them a referral to us. So if they bring their paperwork from the job centre and we put them in the sanctions book, Joe Blogg sanctioned till October the 18th or what have you. And we've got guys in that book who, their offence, their absolute, laziness and idleness and shirtfulness is they've been late for an appointment by 5 minutes twice. And I've got absolutely obsessive about this. Whenever anyone rings me to make an appointment to come to the agency and they say, I'll be there at 2 o'clock, my eyes are locked onto that clock come 2 to see, are you going to be on time? Most people aren't. There's traffic. They get a call just before they leave an office. A million and one things happen. Not many people actually arrive, but that's fine if you're in the world of people who've got a job. If you're in the other world and you're unemployed and you're late by 5 minutes twice, you get a 3-month sanction. The average wage in Dumfries and Galloway is 20,000 quid a year. 3 months. 3 months is a quarter of a year. So if you get a 3-month sanction, it's the equivalent of someone on the average wage being fined £5,200. Can you think of anything you could do to go up in front of the sheriff, which should get you a fine of 5,200 quid? I mean, the worst drunk driving offence is about £2.5 grand. If they're going to fine you 5,200 quid, they're going to send you to jail. So you've got to do something really, really serious. But if you're unemployed, a member of the underclass, the shirking class, these appalling people, you can be, deprived of all your income for 3 months because you've been 5 minutes late twice. I mean, that, in a nutshell, that's what this horrible government is doing.
Was it 2 jobs a week?
38 a fortnight.
38 is it now?
Yeah.
Right, you don't mark down that you've actually contacted people. 38 jobs a week, you get sanctioned. Right, first month, 3 months.
I can confirm that it's actually 38 a fortnight, and what they do now is they check online, so everybody has to register online, so even those that don't know how to use it, and you have to show evidence of that, and then you get sanctioned if you haven't. Of course, if you are unemployed and you work on the side, you're going to get a criminal record. If you're a millionaire and you don't pay your taxes, you'll get a knighthood. That's the reality. That's the reality of the hypocrisy that we live in today, sadly. So, anyway, question at the back, chap there.
I'm just taking it back. My name is Gary Henry. I'm a local farmer businessman. The point that government made about Trident is not hypocritical that we want to give away Trident, but yet not remain under the umbrella of NATO, which is a nuclear power. Surely to God that's unjustifiable.
Gary, is it? Gary, I couldn't agree with you more. Couldn't agree with you more. I think in independent Scotland we should leave NATO, as we shouldn't be in NATO. NATO is a nuclear alliance. let me answer you. Let me answer your question, brother. You've asked that question, at least let me answer it. We, in the Scottish independence movement, as I said earlier, have a whole very different views of a future Scotland. The SNP as a political party, I think it was on the basis of a handful of votes voted at their conference a year ago to declare that they were going to join NATO and get rid of nuclear weapons. Most of the activists of the party didn't want that. They wanted to come out of NATO and to disarm. In an independent Scotland, if we put that to a referendum, should we be members of NATO or not? I think people will say, why should we be a member of NATO? Why should we be a member of a nuclear alliance? I don't think we should do. So from my point of view, brother, that's what I would do.
Right? You cannot justify us getting a referendum on that. I'm sorry, you can't. It's easy to stand up there and say, we'll get a referendum on this, we'll get a referendum on that. We won't. I'm awful sorry, Gary, but referendums are very, very cheap to run. Switzerland has them for just about every single subject. The last big referendum, the last big referendum we had in Scotland. As an example. Gary, I tell you what, see you forward democracy, I don't like it because you seem to shout over people all the time, brother. You asked a question, at least have the decency to let me answer it. You've asked two questions, let me have the decency to answer it. From my point of view, you asked when are we going to have referendums, how can we have referendums, how can you justify referendums? We had a referendum in Strathclyde on whether our water should be privatised or not, and it was overwhelmingly rejected. That's why water in Scotland isn't privatised. So there's an example of referendums that are very, very effective and very, very cheap. So it's just nonsense to suggest that we can't have referendums in those questions. Of course we can have referendums. That's real democracy, when you consult the people over an issue. That's referendums for you.
Let's move on, guys. Now let's move on. Move on. Move on. Tommy. Yeah, okay. There's a lady over there.
Hi Tommy, I missed you on the 15th of April last year at the Scottish Kinship Care Alliance. You might have seen me on the video link. I was actually doing stuff for the Buttle Trust, so I'm a kinship carer obviously. I want to know what benefits we're going to get if we vote yes. I mean, as you know, the Buttle Trust concluded that we are the poor relations. Can you see any benefit if we vote yes?
What's your first name?
Sorry?
What's your first name?
Tulip.
Tulip. Lovely name. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I hope everybody heard Tulip's question about kinship care. Tulip will confirm, while I was in the Parliament for 8 years, it was a great pleasure to support the campaign of the Kinship Carer movement, who are often presented with Hobson's choice, having to become carers for children because of tragic circumstances with natural parents being incapable, unable to be parents to children. Problem is, kinship carers, particularly grandparents, don't get full rights, don't get parental rights. They don't qualify for the same support that you get if you become a foster carer. Now, I've got to say to you, and I encourage foster care, my brother-in-law works in a children's home and relays the absolute scandalous, tragic stories of some of the kids that he has to look after in his children's home, the sexual abuse of kids, the physical abuse of kids. If we can get kids with parents, foster parents, brilliant. We support them, we give them support economically to be foster parents, brilliant. Why don't we do that with grandparents? Why don't we do that with kinship carers? It's just silly. Why don't we do that? Absolutely ridiculous. The amount of grandparents I've come across, many of them already in poverty, and then taking on 2 or 3 kids and trying to raise those kids and make sure they've got the new shoes and they can go on the school trips and they can go on the wee holidays, but we don't support them. Well, that's just nonsense. Some local authorities do, some local authorities don't. That's ridiculous. Let's have a uniform Scottish approach that recognises the value of kinship care and actually supports kinship care.
What I would say to them is, you know, I think kinship care is part of a big raft of, you know, what you could say just social care, or, you know, being bothered about people who are struggling. And I just think there is a great difference between Scotland and England on this when you just look at the way we vote. You know, obviously the Tories have got, as everybody knows, one MP in Scotland. That agenda is not popular up here.
There's
And so
people voted for Tories.
I do think.
That's a quarter of a million people. Of the Scottish people voted for Tories.
I do think the ultimate defender of why things will be different, it is democracy. It's that if anyone actually wants to get elected to Holyrood, or they want to have some power, then the kind of policies which are popular in England wouldn't get you in. That's why, you know, when you look at percentage of Labour and SNP MPs around Westminster, it's huge. And I really don't see that if we voted yes, then we'd suddenly start to revoke the support we're giving to kinship carers. It doesn't make any sense. You know, all of the parties have a much more socially responsible attitude who are likely to get power. So I think in any of these areas, things are more likely to be better, just because, you know, there is no south of England in Scotland. You know, there isn't that great mass of people who tend to vote against this stuff.
Any other questions, folks? Chap in the front here.
It's not really a question, it's just a point that you kind of touched upon, Tommy. By the way, my name's David. It's about education. A lot of people don't realise how dangerous education is in Scotland if we vote no, because as we've seen in England and Wales, there's no free tuition. Education maintenance has been destroyed along with bursary. And you touched upon about how tuition fees could actually rise. You said 11,000. There's actually colleges and universities around London and Oxford who are actually asking for it to be raised, the cap to be raised to £16,000 per year, and charge more for accommodation and stuff like that. And stuff like that frightens me, because hopefully one day I will move on to university, but I won't be able to pay for something like that because I'm from a working class family.
Very good question, Dave, and I'm going to answer it in a minute. I wanted to just refer to a comment that was made at the side about England there, and I apologise, I should have made this point in the course of my earlier remarks. Let's be absolutely clear here about independence. Independence isn't about being anti-English at all. At all. Independence isn't about abandoning the English working class. Independence is about leading the English working class. Because we are going to show by example that there is an alternative to the economic claptrap of the neoliberal model that's on offer from Labour and the Tories at Westminster. Let's be clear about it, the English working class are disenfranchised just now. They don't have a political alternative. People say, oh, UKIP won the European elections in England, and they did. Scandal. Frightening, actually. But they never won it because millions voted for them. They actually get less votes than they did the year before. It's just that so many people didn't vote. Because they look at Ed Balls and they think balls by name, balls by nature. This is a guy who says, austerity with the Tories. Well, we're going to stick to the Tories' austerity plan. We'll just do it slower. So under Labour, you're going to get a doing. It'll just be a slower doing. And in relation to Ed Miliband, for God's sake, would you allow him to run a bath, never mind run a country? So there's no doubt. There is a disenfranchisement that takes place there, disillusionment completely. I think once we do what we're going to do in Scotland, investing more in health, investing more in education, people in England are going to say, hey, by the way, good enough for the jocks, we should be doing that as well. So we're not abandoning the English working class at all. In relation to David's point, can I just tell you a wee story? I got invited to Fettes College when I was an MSP.
I now know what the Elephant Man felt like, because I was obviously there as a circus act. Here's one of the radical socialists. Let's bring them into the ruling class Waynes and let the Waynes see what a socialist looks like. And I went in and I spoke to Fetis, 300 of them, and I gave my outline of how I saw an independent Scotland and how I thought socialism could work in an independent Scotland. And to be fair, they listened politely. And then this one wee chap put his hand up and he said, Mr. Sheridan, isn't it the case in this independent socialist Scotland, isn't it the case that you are going to close down Fetis College? And I said, do you know what? I've just spoke to your principal. He's given me a tour of the college. It turns out that you've got 44 curriculum subjects to choose from. Any language you want, any science you want, any subject you want. You've got a maximum class size of 15. Every one of you have got a personal tutor. You've got sports fields that would be the envy of a Premier League football team. Close down Fetis in independent Scotland? Not at all. We're going to open up Fetis. Because the point David makes down the front about him one day wanting to go to university. Well, why don't we start even earlier than that? Hey! Why don't we have the same educational opportunities at primary and at secondary school that the ruling class can give their wage as far as class size is concerned? And you know what? Instead of billions getting spent on nuclear weapons, as we've discussed, why don't we spend billions in those education facilities that we're talking about?
Very briefly on the subject of education, this is my second speech today. The first one was this morning at 10 o'clock in Georgetown Primary School at Dumfries, where we were invited. They invited First Base because they're going to be collecting to help us with our food parcels. And 320 kids got this really simple message that if every one of them brought in 1 tin of beans a week, then that's a lot of people who get something to eat. And I think they were obviously between the age of 5 and 11, and they really got it. Why do we lose that when we get older? There's a simple solution like that.
That's the age during our school. We help other people to survive.
Well, it's nice that they do.
Yeah,
they show we have got to it.
Oh, sorry, chat there and then a chat there. Two people there.
Hello, Tommy. My name is Gordon. Alistair Darling and Gordon Brown seem so passionate in getting together again in their quest to let the fellow Scots know what is better for us. When they were in Westminster, they had their chance to prove themselves. Instead, they made a mess of it and let the whole country down. Don't you think they have a cheat?
I think it's incredible that we are now being lectured by Alistair Darling and Gordon Brown about the future. These guys are telling us that they know what the future holds, and it's doom and it's gloom if we vote yes. Isn't it a pity they never had that type of crystal ball available in 2008 when Alistair Darling said in his budget, we have now stabilised the banks and we have removed instability from our economy just before we did an economic crash. I don't think we'll take any lectures from Alistair Darling or Gordon Brown about economic futures or economic predictions. These people presided over a raid on pensions and removed final salary pensions from hundreds of thousands of workers, and they presided over 13 years of government, after which Britain was a more unequal country and the millionaires were paying less in tax than they paid before. That's their track record. And it's a track record they should hold their heads in shame about.
Okay. My name is Bob. I was hoping there was going to be somebody for the No campaign here tonight. There's one besides you.
He's at the bar.
This whole referendum campaign that I can't figure out. I have a wee bit of knowledge of military matters. Now, The British government is building 2 massive fleet aircraft carriers that are going to cost us £8 billion. Now, what I want to know is, what are they going to do with these 2 massive carriers? The heyday of the fleet carrier was the 1940s and the 1950s. Every country in the world got rid of them except the Americans. And the Americans used them to dominate other countries in the world. Now, I've never had an explanation of why we are building these 2 massive ships. What are we going to do? Are we going to about dominating other countries that don't do what we want to do?
Bob, I thought what you were going to say, because I think you're absolutely right in the overall philosophy and the lack of logic in the philosophy. Some people in the British establishment are under the illusion that we're still Great Britain, right? They don't seem to understand we're not a big player in the world any longer. We're a wee poodle that hangs on to everything America does. America says jump, Britain says how high. It's pathetic, absolutely pathetic. What I thought you were going to point out is the absolute ridiculous situation that we're building 2 massive frigates and we've not got the aeroplanes to put on them. We don't have the aeroplanes to put on them. And we don't have the money to buy them either. It's absolute nonsense what's happening. And that, you know, myself and Jim Sullers addressed a couple of meetings, and Jim makes the point, if we really want an independent Scotland to make a mark across the world in terms of peace, in terms of clean energy technology, we should take one of these frigates and we should turn it into a hospital ship and send it all across Africa and make sure that it's shipped there and staffed by Scottish nurses, Scottish doctors, Scottish ancillary staff, and we should offer free medical care to the poorest people in the planet. That's the type of thing I would like Scotland to be known for. We can call it the Caledonia, and it can go there, and people will then recognise the contribution Scotland makes to the world.
I am not a no guy. I am undecided.
Plenty of bloody shit. Shut up.
Thanks very much.
That's enough for you.
Go ahead,
Right, go to wait a minute. We'll take these 2 and then we'll come back to you, brother. Okay, you've had 2 good. We'll come back to you, but there's 2 here and then you're the 3rd.
Thanks very much, Tommy. My name is Alexi and I'm very inspired by what you said tonight. And any further doubt I had about feeling yes is gone now. I'd just like to ask, in relation to facilities in Scotland, which are there to support people with mental health, drug, etc. problems, and they're coming from England and Wales and Northern Ireland, as well as Scotland, and they're being funded by Great Britain. What's going to happen to those people who then would be outside of Scotland, coming to those facilities?
What did you say your first name was, brother?
Alexi.
Alexi, can I just clarify? We already have several agreements that are all across Europe. I had a wonderful meeting with a woman called Katrina in Alloa, and she's also a breast cancer consultant who spoke brilliantly at the meeting, and she explained in detail how all of these trading and health agreements work, so that in order to get research in medical, you need to have across Europe at least 3 countries involved in medical research, or you don't get any medical research grants. So every single country has to have at least bilateral or trilateral agreements in relation to healthcare, health provision, in order to qualify for research in medicine. We have people who come here from France, from Germany, from Finland, from Norway, and we have people going to France and Finland and Norway. We have those agreements, and we'll still have those agreements when we're independent. We'll be an independent country, but we'll still have agreements with England, agreements with other European countries to share and pool the medical knowledge and the medical resources. We in Scotland do some procedures better than any other place in Europe, and other places in Europe do other procedures better. So we will still have that, Alexi. We won't lose that, brother. We'll still have it.
Thank you.
My vision about Scotland's pretty much similar to yours, Tommy. My name's Tommy as well. The thing that I'm worried about is, what government are we going to have when we get the yes vote? And will the Labour Party ever be able to recover from firmly entrenching ourselves in the no camp?
Tommy, it's a
It's a very interesting question. As I was trying to highlight through the points I was making earlier, nobody in 3 weeks' time is voting for a political party. Nobody's voting for a political idea. You're voting for a basic human right. You're voting for the right to get in the future the government you vote for. That's what you're voting for. You're voting for the right to decide your own destiny. However, here's the irony of ironies. The next election, the first Scottish election in an independent country in March of 2016, there will be parties that will gain from independence. Irony of irony, the Labour Party is probably going to gain more than any other party. Why? Because the Labour Party in Scotland, if it wants to exist by 2016, is going to have to change. It's going to have to rediscover the things that actually led to it be formed in the first place. The Labour Party is going to have to go back to the pioneers who used to fight for redistribution of wealth, who used to fight for peace, who used to fight for fair wages, who used to fight for trade union rights. That's what the Labour Party used to fight for. If you think about it, SNP, they haven't picked up all these Labour votes because they became much more radical. They've actually just put on the clothes that the Labour Party's abandoned. And I made the point at all these meetings. The working class has not abandoned the Labour Party. The Labour Party's abandoned the working class. That's what's happened. So, in the 18-month period between us voting independence and us looking at that first election, politics in Scotland is going to be so dynamic. It's going to be so diverse. There's going to be lots of people offering you different ideas, different solutions. There is going to be a rich and very tasty political menu on offer for you in 2016. What is quite clear is Scotland is a left-of-centre country. There's no doubt about that. I got interviewed in 2007 with Bernard Ponce of STV. I just lost my seat, unfortunately, in Glasgow by 1%. I was going to say that very, very sad. I suppose I was that night, but hey, you live and you go over it. And Bernard said to me, Tommy, you must be very sad, you've just lost your seat. I said, you know what, personally, you can go back and look at it. I said, personally I'm sad, politically I'm happy. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, Scotland tonight has moved to the left. Scotland has actually voted for an SNP government that's opposed to the war in Iraq, is opposed to nuclear weapons, is opposed to the private finance initiative, is opposed to the council tax, is opposed to the privatisation of the health service. Scotland's voted for a party that's to the left of the Labour Party. That's what happened in 2007, and it got even better in 2011. It got even better. So from my point of view, yes, personally I was disappointed to lose my seat, but politically I was happy that my country had moved to the left. And I think that shows the potential that exists in an independent Scotland.
Gary Henry, farmer.
No, that was Brian, sorry.
Sorry, Jimmy. No, Tommy. First point,
you should be on the stage.
Tommy.
There's one leaving in 5 minutes.
Listen, I thought tonight, I'm not in the no camp, right? I'm undecided, and I hope a fair few of these are undecided tonight. But I can see the bones. There's a skeleton there for the independence of Scotland. And I came here tonight hoping that there's going to be some flesh thrown onto those bones of independence. But all I get tonight was a disgruntled Englishman that still goes on with Hillsborough, but listen, I come from Northern Ireland. I could give you Omagh. I could give you loads of instances that are anti-British. I'm not going to do that. Tommy, we all know you're a socialist. I want flesh put on these bones of independence. And none of what's rhetoric of anti-Tory. You have mentioned, I stopped counting at number 16 the amount of times you mentioned Margaret Thatcher. For fuck's sake, she's dead. Get over it.
Yeah! Let's go!
Get over it. I love flesh. Sorry, Gail.
Have you got your next question, brother? Because you've spoke for ages now. Have you got a question?
Put flesh on the bones for independence, please.
Yes. You know what? There's an old saying.
As they're all saying that you would be better to try and learn from. There are none so blind as those who refuse to see, brother. None so blind. I think it's very, very instructive that in this hall tonight of, I don't know what it's height at, probably 150, 200 people, whatever, I think you're the only one in the hall who thinks there was no flesh put in the bones here. I think you're the only one in the hall. So I've got to say, brother, you've had more than your fair share of say here tonight. So please, you may be undecided. I hope you'll come over to yes in the next 3 weeks. Is there any other question? There's a champion here. Champion, do you want to shoot out the moment? Alistair.
One, the president of Iceland saying he thought he thought it. Two, they say they need to go up because he says he's very chances. Thirdly, they jailed the bankers. Asking the question, do you agree that they should have jailed the bankers? The bankers will answer. But do you think, how can we make it so that an independent Scotland, the bankers will never win like that?
Alistair, I think it's a fantastic point. Most people who don't have access to the internet and don't look at these things online won't know what happened in Iceland. That's this tragedy, isn't it? Because we are taught to believe there's only one way to deal with the economic crisis: punish the poor. Austerity has been redefined, isn't it? Austerity. Punish the poor for the crimes of the rich. That's what austerity is. And yet, Iceland went bankrupt the same way Britain went bankrupt. Iceland went bankrupt with a banking crisis. What did they do? They sacked their government completely. They indicted the bankers that were responsible for the economic mess. They introduced a new constitution. They set up a new government. They gave back all those that were in debt. They gave them back their equity. And they now have more economic production and a higher standard of living than they had in 2008. Now compare that to what we did. We bailed out the bankers. It's funny, we never bailed out the shipyards, we never bailed out the mines, we never bailed out the steel yards, but we bailed out the bankers. And do you know what? Think about this. Who was responsible for the economic crisis? The politicians that allowed the bankers to walk all over them. What have they just done? Gave themselves a wage rise of 11%. 11%, they're already on 65 grand a year. They've gave themselves a wage rise of 11%. The bankers that caused the economic crisis, their bonuses today are higher than they were in 2008. That's the scandal of how we've dealt with the crisis, Alistair. And I think we should be more like Iceland and less like Westminster.
Just one example on how things can be different between different countries. France has a maximum, if you charge above 15% interest rate, you break the law. That's the maximum any lender is allowed to charge anyone is 15%. In Germany it's 8%. In the UK, Wonga are now charging 3,200. So, all this about a local market is just not true. These are three countries which are kind of close together. Look at the difference. And which would you rather live in? The one at 3,200%? Don't think so.
Absolutely. Brother down at the front here, and then is there any other folks who would like a wee question or wee contribution? Because we'll just, unless you have brought your sleeping bags, we can move towards summing up.
Well, I'll make something perfectly clear, like before we go any further on out and out. Yes, ma'am. Right, for the reasons that I believe that Scotland has a chance to go, yeah, we can do it. It can happen. It will work. Right. With regards to the Iceland thing, right, Iceland, what they've done, there's an enforced economy, quite simply they were giving out 30% interest, paying, not, you know, it's as simple as that, buggered up my West Ham, right? You know, it's bankrupt to this. Like, might sound a bit daft, you probably think, yeah, I've had a beer or two, but no, have a little think about it. You know, I'm all behind what's going on. But why on earth, like, quote Iceland, quote Norway, quote Denmark, quote all these, right? Bear in mind we're on the same side. They buggered out also. This is your chance. All of you in here, have a go at it. Why not? It's a free followers.
Any final questions, folks? For you? Oh, two females here. There you go. Hi, sister.
Right, I'm Sister Jo, and I'd just like to ask you what your vision for the care of our elderly would be in an independent Scotland. You know, it's the private companies who are running the free personal care in our care homes. Would you see that being brought back to public ownership?
Joe, did you say?
Yeah.
Joe, listen, see if we as a society can't look after our elderly, then we should hang our heads in shame. I think we judge a society how you look after the kids and how you look after the elderly. It's a scandal, absolute scandal that we've allowed private firms to take over the care of the elderly. What are they doing? They're paying the worst possible wages. They've got unskilled staff. They're getting staff that are getting trained, inverted commas, over a 2-day course, how to look after the elderly. Let's get it back under local authority control, regulated regularly, skilled staff getting paid a decent wage to look after the elderly. By the way, we're all going to be elderly one day. We're all going to be elderly. This is something we've all got to think about. Anything we do today for the elderly is an investment for our future, because we're all going to go there one day. And I think it's a scandal when they started to privatise elderly care. People making as much money as possible, paying workers as little as possible for poor quality care, poor quality food, poor regulation. Absolute scandal. But let's face it, you look at your hospitals, you look at the fact that they privatised the cleansing services in the hospitals. How long did it take before we had superbugs? How long did it take before we had the diseases arising because the hospitals weren't getting cleaned properly because we privatised it? Privatisation doesn't improve anything. Privatisation only improves the bank accounts of those that take over the private companies. That's what we have to do. So, from my point of view, Joe, in an independent Scotland, we've got to make sure that these things are high on our agenda. I think we can do it because I think the Holyrood government can come under pressure. Westminster, they're not going to come under pressure. They're not going to change these things. But Holyrood can change these things.
I would answer it in a slightly different way. I think when you've got a smaller country, 5 million is a damn sight easier to manage, and I think we might be open to a few different ideas. At the moment we've got private company or councils. If you look at to other places, I mean, what's happening in Germany at the moment, I think is really interesting, is that every old person now is beginning to be offered the option. You can have, you can get old and be cared for at home in Germany, or if you like, you can go to the Philippines. And the Philippines has got some kind of good things on offer. It's a hell of a sight warmer, it's sunny all the time. And as far as the Philippines is concerned, the going rate for workers there is $1 a day. The German government pays $20 a day, so it's a fortune. So they're naturally very, very caring people. The greatest job in the world you can get in the Philippines is to work in one of the German camps. It's all funded by the German taxpayer. It's a really different idea, and thousands of elderly Germans are thinking, that'll do me. I'd much rather be able to in that environment. But the reason I bring that up is that's a kind of completely different solution to a difficult problem, which I think a 5 million country, where the people in Parliament are quite closely connected, we're a lot more likely to go for something like that than the great cumbersome UK, which is just too big, too clumsy, too slow on its feet.
I would like to argue that
because I think that's a fantastic idea and I wasn't aware of Germany, and that's why I would like to argue that an independent Scotland will have a lot more sunshine. I would like to argue. The truth is, if that happened, then I think hot sunbeds in Pears Road West, where I live, will go out of business because no one will be using them any longer. Always believe and support small businesses in my area, by the way. But wouldn't it be nice that we had different solutions to these problems? And I think thinking out of the box is the things we can do in a small country. Yourself, sister?
My name's Mary, and I spoke to you during the break, and I mentioned a bit, thank you, on the theme of being exploited, about the changing of the marine boundary, that Tony Blair took a huge swathe, so instead of the border just going horizontal, then went diagonal, so that if you're in St Andrews or Edinburgh and you're looking out to sea, you're actually looking out to English waters. Under Scottish independence, I believe that was in the Legal Act, we'd be able to take our waters back again.
Margaret, isn't it? Mary, sorry. Mary, it's been mentioned as part of the negotiations over the period from 18th September to the first elections in 2016, that it will be on the table, the fact that the boundary was changed and the fact that some of the fishing boundaries were also changed. Whether we're going to be able to secure a return to the previous border or not will remain to be seen. There's a lot of tough negotiations still going on about the division of assets, about the division of debt, the currency question as well. As I say, I could live with sterling probably for 2 or 3 years, but after we've had the transition, I would like to see us develop our own currency so that we have complete independence of our economic affairs. I was reading earlier tonight about Norway and Sweden when they agreed on independence from each other. They shared currency for 9 years and there was no problem. So the idea that sharing currencies being a problem is just ridiculous. It's stupid. In fact, I had a chap contact me today, a guy called Prem Sika, who's a professor of accountancy down at Essex University, a very good friend of mine. He's fantastic on tax evasion. And he phoned me up just to say, Tommy, he's the guy who explained to me how Virgin and News Group newspapers don't pay a penny in tax. Fantastic. You pick up the Sun, you pick up the, well, we used to be News at World before it closed, yes. You pick up these papers and they're always having a go at benefit scoundrels and dodgers, but they don't pay any taxes. You think to yourself, talk about hypocrisy. Prem Sika analyses all that stuff and he says to me, Tommy, I don't think it's been raised yet in the debate in Scotland. Mr Osborne says you can't share sterling, and yet Jersey, which is a tax haven, that's where people go to avoid paying their taxes, it's allowed to use the pound underwritten by the Bank of England, and it doesn't contribute to HS2, and it doesn't contribute to the MOD, and it doesn't contribute to Crossrail in London, but it gets to use the pound. How ridiculous is that? Is it that they hate the Scots that much that they're not going to allow that to happen, at least for the first couple of years? It's pure and utter bluff, trying to fight people. Pure and utter bluff. So I would bear that in mind as well. Do you want to mention anything? Two left. Two final questions. One here and this guy here. Smashing. Who's going first?
Let him go first.
Peter from the north of England, from Lancashire, in fact an old school friend of Mark's. I wish you luck with independence because I think it's a bit of a no-brainer. You need to go independent. And I wish you all the best. But please wish the north of England because we're without them.
Devil vision for you guys.
I'm from here. Once we've voted for independence, I was just wondering what will you be doing before, during and after the next elections in Scotland?
Thanks, Gordon. Folks, if you don't mind, are you okay with me answering that? If you don't mind, I'll just use this opportunity to sum up. Gordon's asked a question about what am I going to be doing. The truth is I'll need to negotiate with my wife, because I don't know. I'm currently doing a law degree, Gordon, at Strathclyde University. I've done the first year, I've got a year to go. Start back in September. So after the referendum finishes, I'll be going into the law degree, so there's no rest for the wicked. I don't know whether to get involved back in politics or not, I'm not sure. I'm probably convinced that if we vote no, then I'm not sure that I'll have the stomach for it, because I think we're going to be a wounded animal. I think we're going to be, unfortunately, getting chased by a pack of wolves. They're going to smell the blood. They're going to say that bunch up there, they can sing the Flower of Scotland at the football games and the rugby matches, but when it comes to it, they've not got the bottle. Let's go after the public services. Let's go after the The Barnett formula will become a device to squeeze us until we hurt. And you know what? I'm not sure that it's a place that I want to be in politically. It's going to be a very, very hard place. Don't get me wrong. I'm saying all that now, and I know that after things happen, we're working class folks. I've tried to fight injustice all my life, and I'm quite sure I'll be drawn into fights against injustice like that. But please believe me, if we vote no, folks, we're in for a doom. We're in for a doom. Make sure that people know that. You know, remember we used to have those wee badges, don't blame me, I didn't vote Tory. Well, we should have wee badges, if we vote no, don't blame me, I voted yes. Because they are going to come after us with a vengeance, an absolute vengeance. Folks, I want to finish by thanking everyone again, thanking Mark for helping to arrange the meeting, thanking Sue for helping to chair the meeting, thanking Tim for helping to organise the meeting, and thanking you for coming along and being a wonderful audience. Also thank the bar staff at the back here. We also managed to raise a couple of cups of coffee, thanks very, very much. I want to address this point about how are we going to convince people in the next 3 weeks? Because we've heard arguments tonight, contrary to what one person was saying in the hall tonight. I think we've heard arguments tonight about why we should vote yes. I think they're good arguments. I think we've won the debate. The only question is now we're going to win the vote. And I think we can win the vote. People say all the time, oh, but the mainstream media is so biased, we can't get a message across. I think what we've got to do is we've got to go underneath the mainstream media. We've got to use the social media. We've got to use the Facebook, we've got to use the Twitter, we've got to use the YouTube, we've got to use the text messages. We've got to get the undiluted message across to people directly. I want to give you an example. There's a wee pamphlet here. I'm hoping that you've got £1 in your pocket tonight that you can spare and you can buy a wee pamphlet. This is called Hope Over Fear. And there's a wee story about this pamphlet. I spoke in Kirkcaldy on the 23rd of January and there was a production company, Two Thumbs Productions, filmed it. And they put it up on YouTube in February. It's now got almost 150,000 views on YouTube. 150,000. Think about that. A speech. Who the hell's going on and looking at speeches, right? And yet that shows you the political thirst that exists on this question. The ideas that people are looking for. How can we argue? How can we win? How can we debate? What we've done is we've turned that speech into a pamphlet so that all the arguments are there for you, so that you can hopefully go to your household, go to your workplace, go to your community and actually argue the case for independence. This shows you that by using the social media we can get to people that the mainstream media isn't allowing you to get to. So please, tweet the night when you get in, put on Facebook the night you get in, spread the word about the arguments that you've heard and use the wee pamphlet. Use the arguments in here to try and convince your family and your friends. Folks, I'm going to finish. I usually finish by referring to my great political hero, a guy called John Maclean. Some of you may have heard the name John Maclean. Sadly in Scotland, not enough people have heard of John Maclean. He's the greatest socialist that Scotland's ever produced, born in Pollokshaws in Glasgow, fought against the First World War, fought against the carnage of working class kids, been sent to fight for profits, was in prison 5 times in his life, released 3 times under popular pressure, died sadly at the age of 44 after being poisoned in Peterhead prison, but fought all his life for trade union rights and for working class organisation. Fantastic guy. John Maclean once said that he stands for life and all that life has to offer. He stands for a Scottish Workers' Republic. I stand for a Scottish Workers' Republic as well. John Maclean never lived to see it. I think I'm going to live to see it.
Brothers and sisters, I want to finish with a quote from another politician. A guy called Malcolm X. Some of you may have heard of him. Founder member of the Black Panther Party in America. Malcolm X fought against racism. When blacks didn't have the right to use toilets that whites were using, didn't have the right to sit in buses that whites were using, didn't have the right to go to restaurants that whites were using, didn't have the right to vote. Blacks were non-people. Blacks were slaves. People with Malcolm X fought against the mighty power of America, fought for civil rights for blacks and won. Unfortunately, he was assassinated. Unfortunately, he was taken out by the American establishment because he became too big a thorn in their side. Malcolm X once said, in fighting for black civil rights, he said, if you don't stand for something, you might just fall for anything. Yeah. Brothers and sisters, why don't we stand for something? Why don't we stand for Scotland's freedom? Why don't we stand for a new, a fairer, more progressive Scotland? Why don't we unite together for a yes vote in 3 weeks' time? Thanks very much, all of you.
Will continue with your help if you purchase one of these pamphlets. Everyone on the Hope Over Fear tour is a volunteer. The sale of the pamphlets is to cover travel.